Welcome to Talking in Stations. We're going to talk about EVE Online. I am Matterall. I'm here with Rundle off screen. How's it going, Rundle? Rundle?
Yes, I'm doing fine. I'm talking without pushing my push to talk button. Habit from a very long day at work. I hope everyone is doing well out there. I'm here.
Good.
I'm here.
There you are.
Reporting for duty, sir.
Awesome. Also with me today, you'll see Tiberius. How's it going, Tiberius?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Tiberius is going to talk to us about commodities, which are found in the monthly economic report. It's a brand new page. We'll talk about what they are and why they're important. We're also going to talk about some news. We'll get to that first when we go over the war zone. And so that's what we'll do today on March 25th. Okay, first things first, let's have a look at the billboards. Looking at this 10 billion and overkill list, I noted how many structures are on here. And again, we're in a phase where a few things are happening in the war, which is basically in Delve, but there's also parts that are in Fountain, as we'll talk about today. And of course, the stuff that's happening in legacy space where it's being demolished as well. So I was looking at this and there's just an incredible amount of structures going down on both sides. You can see the Goon Swarm structures here, mostly Fortizars. There's faction Fortizars. I think 2 went down in the last 2 days. I believe there are 2 Keep Stars, which are in danger of being destroyed. We'll probably see them attacked sometime soon, if not 4. And there's definitely 4 next week. So things are definitely moving faster. I did get some information from a friend who's actually calculating all this stuff. And from a month and a half ago in Delve, there were, I believe it was 960 structures. It's down to about 480. So you could say that in that amount of time, I think that was a month and a half, 500 structures went down. So they're about halfway done. But what's changing is the cadence of destruction is moving up. Sound right to you, Rundle?
Yeah, it does. Timers on the big structures, systems being sino-jammed, people not being in fleets to resist, hunkering down 1DQ. You don't get to put pressure elsewhere, and absolutely with the counter-offensive in other areas means you got to move in faster, right? Kick the old inhabitants out and get moved in. Bring the in-laws, the whole shebang. Got to do it fast, right? Got to do it a little faster now.
Yeah. Pack the furniture on top of the station wagon.
Exactly. Get into town. We're moving. Like get out of town. Get out of the old town. Get in the new town. We're moving. Like now.
Yeah.
Well, so you got to pick up the pace when that happens.
The old town back in Impasse is totally getting destroyed, right? Impasse has fallen. That is at a point where it's essentially all the good stuff is destroyed. Now they're just cleaning up the less expensive stuff. But that credit goes to the Imperium for wiping out Impasse. The former area belonged to Legacy. It's kind of a mixed bag because Legacy is, of course, at war in Delve. That left their backfield open. Not much happened there at first. It was well defended, but I think when additional help moved in the form of Deepwater Hooligans, and Initiative went to work there, and Bastion was there, and then you had Red Alliance there, that started to add up to something, and you see Impasse falls.
Yep. Yeah, there's this one Providence thing too. I know it's really not the war, but I thought that was an interesting one. There's almost a 19 billion. You just had it. It was the couple yesterday.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, right there. Low-Sec Trading Corporation lost their Fortizar to honorable third party in Provi. So there's still some combat elsewhere going on, and there was some stuff in Fountain. So there's little bits of fighting going everywhere else. There's people taking opportunity to attack when maybe people are least expecting it.
All right, we have a question or a comment from the grid. He asks, a great question is, the space test taken, how will they hold it without Horde? You can take a crack at that if you want.
Well, yeah, I think the Test, Legacy, PanFam, that whole group is made up of a lot of people. Horde for sure is really spending a lot of time in the war doing a lot of neat things. I'm sure they'll still be around. Defense, though, is different than offense, right? And Horde's going to have their own area, and then they're going to have, they're going to have their own areas to deal with. So I guess it all depends on what the counteroffensive will be, or what holding it means. As this war is showing, defense is a different game than the offense. Grinding through all of Delve takes a lot of manpower. Holding it takes a lot of manpower, but it's just a different strategy. I believe that'll be the difference. Now, how will Horde, how will the blue situation and the whole, PanFam, Pappy thing work out? Who knows when that time comes, but um, yeah, I think Test will and Legacy and the existing group will, have lots of people to pull together for defense, but time will tell. I don't want to make any predictions. Are difficult in this game.
Tiberius, you don't have a comment on that, do you? It's not really your
No,
field,
I don't. I think he's right in the fact that it's really hard to predict as to where things are going to go.
Yeah.
So I think Rundle's 100% correct there.
The way I think of it is probably different than most people. Probably, I don't see this going back as to the way it was. There's just way too many things that have changed. For instance, this war wasn't even really possible, as we were talking earlier inside of Talking in Stations, unless some of the changes from CCP had happened. We're talking about scarcity, right? We're talking about cores having to be inside of stations or structures.
Citadels,
yeah, citadels. And I get stuck between citadels, structure, and then the actual
stations.
Stations.
All that stuff,
and there's like so many ways to describe structures that are owned by players. But I feel like there's so much that has happened in the last year that has even made this war of attrition possible. Remember, we talked about how many structures are left inside of Delve, which are like 480 according to this spreadsheet. It was 900 a few months ago. A month and a half ago, 6-7 weeks ago. Going back to June, you had the Imperium constituted about 4,000 structures. And with 4,000 structures, that is an enormous hill to climb as far as, think about all those timers, right? Part of the defense of the Imperium a year ago was, go ahead and attack us. You'll have, 11 years of timers to go through. So it was an impossible task. And the Imperium had a great economy, which could reconstitute anything that was destroyed. That was part of that wall that would just never be penetrated. So when players thought about attacking the Imperium, a lot of them said it's too late. Those guys are just too big. They're too insulated. And the way the mechanics work, we can't possibly do it. They could just throw money at whatever we destroy and be right back into business. But CCP comes in, says we need more dynamic gameplay. It's getting static, so we're going to make Titans weaker. They're able to be destroyed by 10, 20 dreads. Faxes can no longer save a Titan, and so that, now you're going to lose Titans if you have them out. If you're going to fight with them, you're going to lose some. So that's different, and structures are the same way. The structure timers were worked on. I think they became a little more rapid. There's a bunch of changes that happened that allowed an invincible wall of Delve to become weaker because the mechanics allow it. And also you have a committed force that's able to fight longer than a 2-month war, which, if you think about it, is pretty amazing, because the Fountain War, 1 month. The Halloween War is about 2 months. World War B was about 2 months. The 2018 Summer of Titan Brawls, that was a total of about 3 or 4 months. Depends on when you mark them. The only war that kind of compares to this as far as length is the Winter versus Legacy War. That was about a year. And that ended right around blackout time. So this is one of the longest wars Eve has seen, and this has all the big players in it with all the big they call them toys. That's what they call them in NC dot anyway. But all the big structures, all the big ships are at war. But none of this was possible until CCP decided to make the game a little more dangerous for advanced players, wealthy players, etc. That's where we're at now. We don't know where we're going to be in 5 months, 5 more months, right? The whole world could change today or tomorrow or whenever. So you have to look at it that way as well. And I don't think it's going to be a matter of, I'm answering a very long question because it's a broader subject than just like, how does this snap back into form? It doesn't. This rubber band has been pulled for so long, and the forces at work on it are so strong, that is no longer a rubber band that's going to snap back into a circle. It is going to look completely different and maybe even act completely differently. And so again, after this war, I don't think you'll see the typical, okay, Horde's gone home to do something. I think it's going to be more of mission is not complete until the wardens of nullsec are a thing, where there's a warden of the north like fraternity, there's a warden of the east, horde, there's a warden of the west, legacy, and there's a warden of the south, which we don't know who that's going to be. At this point, it's all a big mess right now, so that was probably one area that needs to be pacified after this whole thing. And those wardens will hold that area and suppress it, basically, like kings at a table. And that's kind of how I see the future forming. I don't know if it'll be that way, but that's how I see it. So you'll see, and they'll fight each other, right? They'll fight each other. But just like the Tranquility Trade Tower showed you, whenever that thing gets in trouble, even the people fighting in Dell fight together. So they can get together to fight the Imperium, wherever it appears, and then go back to fighting each other. So I think that's what's going to happen. I wouldn't call it a blue donut. I would call it like the wardens of the map. That's kind of how I see it. That was a very long answer for a very simple question. Okay, let's move on, shall we? This is the big, let's go into Dell first. TNT moved a lot of their stuff to 1DQ from their former home in Helm's Deep. Here it is in 8RQ. You have it circled here. I am losing my voice, which happens when I talk too much. I think there's a bunch of stuff here that belonged to, before this belonged to TNT, and they are now moved in with everybody else. Today also was a big day for, that might have been yesterday or in the last few days. Today, or actually over the weekend around this same time, I think Siberian Squad left Aquarius and moved to a staging that was in YZ TAC L. That staging for Dazar belonged to the Initiative and was occupied by Siberian Squad. That's where they went. So Siberian Squad out of Aquarius. Looks like Brave's going to have that territory that they wanted. I think they had high hopes for Hanzo, the FC for Siberian Squad, being able to take on some of the people in Aquarius. That didn't work out. So I wanted to show you the kill boards. So YZ9, we were just talking about that, was the Fortizar that belonged to the Initiative. You see yesterday, Aquarius GOP, that was the old, I believe that was the old Siberian Squad. Or no, it might have been, yeah, Siberian Squad. I don't know if that was their staging, but they were in GOP. So they're out of there, and that got destroyed, that Fortizar. But look here. YZ TAC L, the Initiative's Fortizar destroyed. That happened today, a few hours ago. So that is basically their command center. So where did everything go? All the equipment in here? Was it asset safetied? Not sure if it was asset safetied, but you can see that this is an NPC area. So they're probably in an NPC station. You can see there's a station in there. So Siberian Squad and Initiative still in YZ TAC, but not in their Fortizar anymore. They'll have to live on an NPC station. Okay. I think that's pretty much war news. There's a ton of stuff going on. We can't bring it all to you. Talking about talking to Imperium people as well to see what they're up to, and they are fighting fights where they can fight. Again, war isn't very. It isn't what you think it is. It's a lot of times you fight over things, and the teams are equal or preferable. Sometimes you're just outmatched to the point there's no reason to take a fight. And then sometimes you're ready to go, and your opponent decides they don't want to take the fight. So there's a lot of like stalls and not non-fights, basically. So a lot of structures being destroyed without a lot of defense in Imperium space, but the Imperium not getting fights that they can actually fight or want to fight. Or Test and friends are not showing up for fights that they want to take. That kind of stuff's going on too. That's your war news. Let's move on to monthly economic report.
Big news of the day for me.
Yeah. Why don't we start there, since we don't see a lot of interesting stuff here. But when we get to commodities, it's a big wowzer.
Yeah, so they actually, and I have to give credit to CCP or Larrikin, because this has been something that wormholers have been asking for a long time. Mostly because it's the missing link for wormholers to be able to self-police their community. I would say the wormhole community, by and large, is really good as to measuring what's good for it, what's not good for it, what's working, what's not working. And this particular piece of data was actually very necessary in order for it to work. In order for us to kind of get a good estimate as to what's going on. Unfortunately, I think back sometime last year, early last year, maybe January of 2020, or maybe November, December of 2019, the bot that breaks down the commodities broke. Something just didn't. Something's not working anymore, and it's. And we weren't able to kind of guess as to what was going on. Last year in October, I put together a mathematical model to kind of predict, based upon the commodities value that was coming out of the MER, as to where the blue loot value is. And it turned out to be relatively accurate. Looking at the data now, I was able to kind of break it down, and it was my model was within about a 15% margin, which is good to know, because, while I did predict that value, or, the amount of blue loot that was coming out of wormhole space was getting higher, it's not out of control. It's still, relatively within controllable means. And, I think CCP is obviously going to look at this and maybe look at, ways of changing it. But it's important to understand that.
All right, let's go back a second. I just found your slide that has all the stuff that you were talking about. Yeah. So we'll come back and revisit this and talk about these things. But for a second, I want to just take a minute to appreciate what this slide actually means. What are commodities? Why are they different? Why is this new graph important?
Because it breaks down all of the different types of commodities that are being sold to market. So commodities you get for completing a mission, a site, any kind of like PvE activity, that essentially means that you're not getting a direct injection of cash into your wallet, which means that there's a potential risk for those commodities to either be stolen, destroyed, or those two, basically. Those are the only two things: stolen or destroyed. Or
left in a station accidentally. There's a third option.
Or left in a station accidentally and forgotten about. I know that's definitely happened before, especially in wormhole space, and it ends up in somebody else's pocket because they destroyed their structure. But I would say that's probably the most important part, is to be able to kind of look at accurately, okay, where's the commodities coming from and why is it important? And to be able to kind of judge where the health of those sites are and if it's healthy or if it's not healthy.
Yeah, we
So
used.
for
Okay.
most people playing, it's going to be things like tags and stuff like that, right? In high sec, anyways. If you're just listening and you do some missions and different stuff, that's what we're talking about, right?
Well,
Right.
And
Tags are considered to be Empire insignia tags are considered to be commodities.
right.
But since that system came out years and years ago, tags have a relatively low value,
Right, but
unfortunately.
just to help kind of level set the playing, the what a player would do with a commodity, you collect the various ones and then you do a turn in or something. And the graph shows the various locations. There's Triglaive, there's the Overseer, there's um, the
Sleeper components
sleeper
from
ones, right? When you start playing the game, one of the very first commodities you come across are the basic tags, Carista tags or whatever, Navy tags, whatever faction Navy tags, etc. Right.
right.
So that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
those
yeah.
items.
Yeah, for new players will run into those before they do any of this more advanced stuff. But actually, let's talk about that for just a second. You come into the game and you get these tags when you run a military mission, right? It's loot, and you pick it up and you got to turn it in for the actual money. And that's different than just going out and ratting where you get the money and you don't have to deal with the tag or any of that kind of stuff. You just get it and put into your bank without you doing anything. It's direct deposit. But this is not. This is a check in your hand and you have to go to the bank and you have to turn it in or to the trade market.
Yeah, or you need something else, or maybe you're gaining loyalty points. And you need these commodities along with your loyalty points to gain some item on the loyalty store. And then you make more, you make something from it and make even more money or whatever. So the commodity side is a very complex element. A lot of new players don't really look at it and they just go, I don't know what this is. And they sell it on the market or just delete it, God forbid. But as you can see from this graph, there's more tiers to this and you can really make some serious bank with the commodities and going after commodities.
Right. So when you start looking into the more advanced stuff that actually is very lucrative, that is stuff coming out of wormhole space, which Tiberius knows very well. It's stuff coming out of Triglavian, Poshven space. There's stuff going on in events. So there's different opportunities to get commodities, which are a pretty good income. It's where CCP is putting a lot of effort and a lot of money for players to get because it requires active gameplay. And it also puts in the element of risk. If you're carrying it around in your cargo, it gives pirating opportunities to other players. Okay, Tiberius, we're looking at your graph now. Do you want to tell us what you were assuming and what you found?
Yeah. So so first of all, I'd actually like to kind of point out, you see that huge jump in the pink/red, depending upon what your screen looks like. That is actually, I forgot to label that. That was actually the snow event in December, and Overseers dropped in those events pretty substantially. Like there was a pretty substantial amount of drops in Overseers effects. So if you're looking at this graph with us, that's what that particular jump is, and I forgot to label it, so I apologize.
Yeah. That would have been the winter. That would have been the winter. I had it. Sorry.
Nexus event.
Thank you.
Yeah, Winter Nexus event that happened in December and continued into early January.
So one quick thing about that, Tiberius, CCP Fozzie, who is the guy that directs the events, he's the one that designs them with a team, said that they were going to try to make the Christmas one pretty lucrative. There were going to be a lot of good rewards for people, and you can see he wasn't kidding around. Look at that gigantic red spike.
Yeah, that was an incredible amount of ISK injection into people who went out and made the effort to put in the risk of running those sites, because there was an element of risk running those sites, right? The more lucrative the site was typically in low sec and especially in null sec, and you had those filaments that could send you out to those sites. Obviously, there was issues surrounding that in terms of people being able to essentially get away for free. But that's a discussion for another time. But yes, that was, I think that the fact that you said CCP
Fozzie
was Foz. Yeah, CCP Fozzie was the project lead on that. He said that he wanted to make it lucrative. Well, look at that. It was incredibly lucrative. And I think combined with the fact that there were just so many people running these sites, I think it's obvious to CCP is that players are hungry for these sites. If you remember back to the Triglavian days, during the early stages of the invasion, there were those, I can't remember what those sites were called, but they were just like event sites that popped up every so often that people would go run. Emerging conduits, that's what they were called.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, so, people were running emerging conduits, and that was lucrative to them because there was an element of risk to it. And then eventually people figured out how to min-max the site, and then CCP was like, okay, let's maybe tone it back a little bit and also lock it behind, the new iteration of invasion. So yeah, I think these events are going to continue, and I think they're definitely going to be relatively lucrative.
Yeah. One last thing on those, they can turn them on and off, which is what's good. That's why they can afford to infuse them with money, because then people participate, get out there and do stuff. There's a chance to make a lot of money really quickly, but then they turn it off. So they don't have to worry about it busting out of control and distorting the game with too much wealth in the game. That's why you think you'll see that.
Well, thanks to Fozzie for a hot ISK injection in the middle of cold winter. Well done, Fozzie.
That was a really fun event, I think, for a lot of people.
There's a second bump there that you can see, by the way. Did you want to explain that, or just as long as
that was back? Are you talking about back in February of 2020?
Actually, going forward,
the second bump. I don't know what that second bump is.
It's Guardians Gala.
Is it Guardians Gala? Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought.
Right there, February 14th.
So it is Guardians Gala.
Yeah, not nearly.
And Guardians Gala was
Yeah.
Guardians Gala was another event that was, a yearly event, I guess now, because this is the second time that it's happened. So there was a bump in more Overseers effects from the Guardians Gala stuff.
Yeah. Now, one last thing. When we would talk at Talking in Stations, and we did shows during the Winter Nexus, we were telling you, go out there and do these things. Ashtarothi was, Elise was, Arcia, I think she was doing them too. Like, they were saying there's a lot of good money out here, especially Elise, and he wasn't kidding. And then when Gala came around, we also told you this one's profitable, not quite as profitable, and it certainly isn't, but it is a spike nonetheless. It's just about 1/4 the size of the winter one. So when Talking in Stations is telling you there's an opportunity here to make some money, like, take that as true based on this evidence. All right, Tiberius, go ahead.
So I'll kind of walk through this graph and the important factors of it during the starting from last year, about February of last year, which is the first point on the graph, which is that CCP nerfs high class rolling, which is essentially the From Wormholes with Love patch. They stopped people from being able to one-shot high-class wormholes, which basically means that way back in the day, and now again, because it's been patched back in, you used to be able to jump a carrier or another type of capital ship through the hole and bounce it back, and you would only have to do that once. So with lower class wormholes, you have to do 3, 4, 5 times, where you have to go back and forth, putting mass on the hole in order to create a new wormhole. CCP essentially got rid of that, and because they patched out a mechanism in the game which was being used by wormholers for years, which allowed for them to trick the game to use mass calculations to push the wormhole and collapse it. That's since been patched back into the game, so that's kind of a moot point. But keep that in mind while we kind of go through this. And then the Guardians Gala, which is the 90% PvP loot drop, you can see right at that point, there's a drop in ratting activity, but there's also a spike in the Overseers effects in relative mean of the same spike as the Overseers effects from February of this year. So, obviously people, when the 90% PvP loot drop is happening, they're not going to, be wanting to do that. But on top of the fact that they added the connectivity changes to the high class wormholes, which basically meant that high class became spaghetti, right? So instead of seeing 1 or 2 wandering wormholes, you saw 5, 6, 7, 8 wormholes all at the same time, and it was kind of ridiculous, and it didn't last very long because it got pretty absurd. So that got that, and then that got patched out about 2 or 3 weeks later. You can see after it gets patched out, it starts to climb up a little bit. Surgical strike happens, and then things drop off again. I think part and parcel because surgical strike obviously changed the way that people rat, because now you have to be more tankier in order to be able to survive the site. So it took a little while for people to kind of figure out what's going on. It stabilizes, drops again, not really sure why. And you see it slowly but surely starting to creep up. And then you really see, and this is kind of an important part here, is that right about July of last year, you see World War B2 kicks off, and then it really starts climbing. And personally, I think what's going on is that while World War B is going on, I've seen a lot of Imperium in and out of wormholes in order to make money, because they're not able to rat their normal space that they've been in. A lot of people are getting burnout, so they're moving into wormholes. The word spreads. Oh, hey, you only need 2 nesters and a Leshak, or 2 Leshaks and a nester, depending upon how you run it, in order to run C5 wormhole sites, and you can make 1.2 bill an hour, or maybe a little bit less. It's probably closer to like 900 mil an hour. And then the word spreads, and it's like, oh, hey, you can come into the wormhole with me, and then maybe we can share sites. And slowly but surely it starts creeping its way up. And then again, you see the Guardians Gala event in February of this year, where it drops off because it's a 90% PvP loot drop, and then it goes right back up again after it drops in. Because again, if you have a 90% loot drop, a lot of people are like, I'm not really interested in feeding my ISK to other people, and other people are probably looking for things to kill, so I'm just going to relax for a bit. So that's pretty much what's going on with that gradual uptick there. And one thing to really be cognizant of is that this is not a wormhole space in general. This money that's going into wormholes, or it's coming out of wormhole space, is not all wormholers, right? A lot of this is coming from people who live in Null, and I gotta say, it is especially prevalent in the Australian time zone. I've spoken to Senalarma a couple of times about this, is that he has said that he has seen huge Nestor Leshak clouds in high-class wormholes that are just burning through these sites, and they call them vacuuming the sites, is the colloquial way of saying it. They're just vacuuming these sites up with these huge amounts of these large Nestor Leshak clouds, whether they're input broadcasting or they just have 20 clients up and they've managed to perfect their method.
What's a cloud?
A cloud meaning like we're seeing like 20 to 30 battleships at once plussing through the wormhole. Wow. So one of the things about Nestor Leshaks is that they are very, very, very undermassed battleships, right? So a Nestor weighs, I think, about 40 million tons or something like that. And a Leshak, even with the nerf just recently, was about, I think it's only like 95, maybe 100, comparable to other battleships that are like 120, 130. So you can fit more of them through the wormhole, so to speak.
Before it collapses from...
Right, exactly. So they can fit a fleet of about 20 or 30 through before, and then plus it back without collapsing it behind them, essentially, or without collapsing it while they go through.
So that's what a cloud of them are. Okay, new word for me.
Yeah, so that is essentially what a cloud of Nestor Leshaks is. It's about 20 to 30 of them. And again, whether or not these are people that are input broadcasting or just have a really well done client setup and they've, min-maxed the site, that's unknown. But we do know that these are on the rise, and, this is, it's evident. You can see the evidence for yourself here in the Commodities
So you don't think
graph here.
you don't think this is a group? It's usually just one guy with a bunch of alts.
I think it's a whole host of things. There's a whole host of things that are involved with this. C6 ratting right now is incredibly lucrative because there's not a lot of people living there, and there's not a lot of people rage rolling C6 sites or rage rolling for C6 ratters. There are a few, but they're usually in off time zones. And on top of the fact that, Leshacks are cheap. They've become cheaper as more and more people run the abyssal sites. And Leshacks are less skill dependent as capital ships are. So, there's a whole host of things that could be it. It could be lots of people doing it. It could be a small group of people doing it. But to be perfectly honest, I believe that it's a pretty good mix of both. I think that there's groups of people that are doing it, but I also think that there are quite a few people who are illicitly and legally acquiring these resources through the battleship clouds. And we talked about this pretty extensively with some other high-class dwellers in my episode in January. I had a member of Hard Knocks on there, and he kind of briefly went over, what he feels to be the issue, because he's a bit more active than I am, and so are some of the other members of, I haven't been in high-class space as long as they have, and that's some of the stuff that they've expressed to me, that what they feel is going on in high class. And I kind of empathize and sympathize with them, because I've started to see it more and more as we have lived here longer and longer.
Yeah. Wild. All right.
That wormhole life, though. Wow.
Yeah.
Paying off.
It's good work if you can get it.
Yeah. The important thing to know here is that a lot of this money is going out of wormholes. It's not, I would venture even to say that it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40% of all value that comes out of wormholes right now is people who don't spend the primary amount of their time inside of wormholes.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
You can maybe find here's a new corp name if someone's looking for a wormhole corp name. I'm just here for the commodities.
Now, that's the way wormholes were supposed to be used. They were supposed to be expeditions. You go in there, you make some money, and you come out. You're not supposed to live in there. An initial design of wormholes, 2009. What do you think of it now, Tiberius?
That's the way that it used to be. But I guess what it was supposed to be, quote unquote. CCP has allowed for certain things to essentially drive the way that wormholes are. Wormholes are technically still a bit of the Wild West in terms of how things go, and that's just because of the volatility of your connections. However, I would say that a good portion of wormhole space has been colonized, for lack of a better word, because we have groups, for instance, like Hard Knocks and Laserhawks, that set up farms inside of high-class wormholes and C5s and C6s, and those are the resource generators. And of course, I'm picking on Hard Knocks and Laserhawks because of the first two that come to mind, but this is everywhere, right? Well-established groups inside of wormhole space essentially set up resource management operations that allow them to operate inside of wormhole space. And, that's essentially a farm for short. I have a farm. I think quite a few people in my corps have farms. And that's just the reality of how wormhole space works. And, we've learned how to colonize and exploit the resources inside of wormhole space. And it's actually quite shocking to me that other people haven't really looked at wormhole space as a resource exploit except for ISK injection, because we have a ton of ore sites that just go untouched. And, if you had an expedition group of 20 or 30 exhumers go in there, you could clear the site inside of 2 or 3 hours, and you've got 6 to 7 bill in your pocket. So, and I know a lot of people are hurting for war these days.
Right.
So, but to kind of circle back into what you were saying and your question, it's still the Wild West of Eve, in my personal opinion, but it is much more colonized than where it was certainly 10 years ago, and I would say even venture to say 5-6 years ago.
Cool. All right. Well, let's look at the sinks and faucets, because as we were saying before, commodities were not included in that chart. They are now. So this is the new chart that we have up for commodities inside, now showing the blue line there, along with other faucets like basically NPC bounties, which are that instant injection of money for killing things that you get. And we'll have a closer look at how commodities stack up. They look like they're really ahead of NPC ratting at this point, because ESS is taking a chunk out as well. Bounty prizes include ESS auto payments. So I believe that is auto payments once you collect. It must be once you collect, not what's in the bank there. So that is going to be interesting to try to unpack. We'll explain that in just a second. In the past, you had bounty payments, which didn't include ESS because EXS didn't really exist the way we know it now. So you can see here, CCP says this is where ESS was updated. And so what ESS does, it's called the Encounter Surveillance System, is it takes about 40% of whatever you're making if you're out there ratting, and it takes it and puts it into a bank, actually 2 banks, but the main bank is the one that's, say, temporary. And people can come and raid that bank while you're out there ratting. And if they don't raid it, if nothing happens within 3 hours, I think, or is it 2 hours? I think it's now 2 hours. Then that money goes into your account. So you get it. You don't lose it. But if somebody does come in that 2-hour window of time and tries to steal your bank, you got to fight for your money. And that's a way of creating more opportunities for pirating, opportunities for conflict in EVE Online. That's one of the risk-reward exchanges that have been happening. So, of course, the NPC bounties aren't really what they used to be. You can see how tall they used to be over here. They go off the charts. And this is like the heydays of ratting with supers and everything else. Then you have this slow decline as nerfs are being handed out to try to control that income. Also, a war takes place in Tribute. And then boom, blackout hits. And you just see all that ratting stop because it's too difficult to do it without local. If you don't know what's in your system with you, you're not going to take a very expensive super carrier out to rat because you're going to get tackled and killed. So everybody just stopped. That gets lifted, and you can see it goes right back up, and then eventually starts to kind of flatten out as more and more changes are coming through, whether they're Sino changes or changes to drone fighters and that kind of stuff. So then ESS hits, and that's when you see this huge drop again. So ESS again taking out 40%, and unless you collect it, it doesn't get counted in this. So I imagine when it says bounty prizes include ESS auto payments, which means included in this graph is the money that gets back to you if nobody comes and steals your money. I think that's what it is. So what's happened is commodities, as we were looking at before, we were looking at a breakdown of commodities, blue loot, red loot, overseer effects, other stuff, right? This is all those put together. And that's what this chart is here. So here's that giant spike we talked about in December. That was that big red spike on the other graph. Here is blue. So you can see that commodities actually account for more money than bounty prizes. It looks like a pretty strong pattern for these last 3 or 4 months. So that is interesting. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens once the war peters out, if that ends up continuing to be the case, or if that ends up not continuing. If
Right.
it ends up changing, where bounties end up overtaking commodities again. It really does seem like to me that CCP is really trying to encourage active ratting as opposed to the passive, ISK gaining that a lot of people are very used to in nullsec. And obviously it's still going to be there in terms of availability, but they're trying to incentivize people to find more lucrative ways of doing that. And I feel like it's the right way of doing it in a lot of respects, because the more active you are, the more that you should be able to earn, and the more experience you should be able to get, the more in return from the game is what you should be able to expect.
Right.
Yeah, I think I like this graph. I would look to this for years. The faucet side, the negative side of the graph down below, there's a couple items that I've always kind of watched. One, you can see the skill purchases, which I believe, if I understand this correctly, this is the skill points purchase, because they just kind of start back in 2019. And then there's the kind of green line that kind of goes for a while. And you can see if you go back into 2018, 2019, there was a pretty significant, faucet, and then it kind of drops again. They kind of reset some of the skills, but it's a pretty consistent green line, which tells me that new players are coming into the game. I'm going back completely off kind of why most people would look at this, but for me, I look at that and I see new players are coming in the game. There's a consistent purchase of skills as time goes on. I've qualified for this, I've qualified for the next one, and they're working through the skill plans. And you don't see massive drops or peaks. There's just a consistent the skill market and buying those things. And then there's also blueprints, which means people are
Well,
learning.
by skills, we mean skill books. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, skill
Yeah,
books.
that's skill books from
That's
the
skill
skills
books,
market.
right, from the skill market. Yeah, that's the skill books, right? So
There
new
is-
players are coming in. Go ahead.
There is a very obvious dip. I feel like in December, it looks like during the Christmas event that they tried, the Winter Nexus event that they were
Fair.
pushing towards new players. I think during Christmas time.
Yep. So more new players came in, more skill books were purchased. Yep.
Why would you see?
Because in this
I'm
case,
missing
more
that.
money's going into it. It's the negative dip is more money is being spent.
Yeah, more money is being spent. So you see, if you look at December of 2020, you'll see that there is a dip, which is actually counterintuitive. If you flip the graph, it actually means that more money is being spent on skills, which typically means that there are more players active in that particular sphere.
And I think that. Go ahead.
It could also be that people are just buying skills in order to get themselves into characters that can go and run those Guardians Gala sites efficiently.
Possibly. Yeah, for me, the whole thing tracks the narrative of the new players and new people coming in, because the blueprints are fairly consistent. If you're a long-time EVE player and you're into industry, you've probably bought all the blueprints you want and you've researched them, and now you're just creating your own copies. There's no reason to buy new blueprints. New players tend to get introduced to the LP store fairly soon in their careers, and so there's a consistency there. Broker fees and transaction tax for me don't really kind of play into that, but those things track well. And even the skill purchase, you'll have some characters, people buying those things to move into that next ship faster or whatever. But for me, the blueprint, the skill market, so the blueprint and skill market, the LP store, those three track really well to show for me that a lot of new players are still coming into the game in a fairly consistent flow.
Yeah, this big dip here that's happening, I think, in transaction tax here. I believe this is when they had a tax break for like the holidays, and you could sell things for 50% tax free or something. There was definitely something that happened. I think that's when that was.
That was also when the huge influx of overseers effects was going on, right? Because we looked on the previous graph, we saw a huge amount of overseers being sold.
Right. That must be what that
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
So the transaction taxes are coming. I would imagine a good portion of that is coming from the sale of the overseers effects.
Maybe actually, I'm going to back that up to November, where the spike goes up because they are collecting less tax.
That's the negative tax. Yeah, less tax.
Less tax is being collected because it's not being drained or whatever. I'm reading it backwards. And that's when that happened, because they did give us a tax break. I know, because there was a ton of minerals that I wanted to sell at the time, and I thought now's a great time. So that must be what that is.
And I think this spike, the positive, more spending spike, which is happening right here at the end of December, beginning of January. For me, I would take that as the Christmas, New Year's holidays. People are truly off work, spending time, nowhere to go in today's world, and so, let's pick up Eve again. Crap, I'm a little behind, and I'll sell some of this crap, blah blah blah, in our market. And so I think you have an uptick in overall activity in the game. And so money's being spent by people
and you can
for
see
2 or 3 weeks.
You can see the Black Friday event too on the last week of November. You see the less money being in the transaction tax and a lot more brokers fees. In fact, they almost actually touch because a lot of people were trying to put stuff up for sale there.
Riso sets confirms what I thought the second time, which is it was a Black Friday event when you had the tax holiday. So that would track with what we're seeing. The end of November, beginning of December.
Yeah, there's a graph that's just before this one. If we could take a peek at it, because I would just a couple observations / questions about it.
Yeah, let's get to it. And then where this dropped me off, so I have to run back down.
It's right between the. It's right between the two graphs we were looking at, right between the commodity faucet and the sinks, which is the service fees breakdowns by providers. That one right
this
there.
One.
With the yep. So here, this one, what I'm interested in is the changes this week to the jump clones. There is a number of service fees that are not insignificant in the game. I mean, it's not in the trillions, but there is clone transfers, there's jump clone activation, and jump clone installation fees. Now, there's 3 separate blocks of fees, both for player and for NPC station tracking. So with the changes where there'll maybe be a consolidation into one location of a number of clones, where you may go and move yourself now easily to a player-owned station for a very low installation fee, and then fly it over to wherever you want, so you can stack your clones in one place. Players who have 3 or 4 clones around a region can now consolidate them to where they want. They don't have to continually, manage their clones through the various mechanisms that there were. I'm curious just to look at this snapshot now, talk about it, throw that theory out, and then the next economic report I'm going to come look at this, because I'm going to be very curious how that is going to change in the realm of jump clones. I don't think this is a massive sink by any means, but I'm just curious to see how a change like that impacts, because if you have a Citadel in HiSec, or anywhere for that matter, you might be making a little bit of money off of clone installations and stuff like that. So, I don't know, maybe there's to you as a small corp, maybe there's going to be a little dip in some of your income because of that clone all in one station change that they just made.
Cool. Well, we'll look at that. Yeah, that clone change. I'm not sure everybody's on that must have multiple implants on different clones, but I think over time, as people get less afraid of it, and people who haven't used it and stuff, I think that will become a big deal. Okay, we always check in with velocity of ISK. This is how much money is moving around. So, we want this to be on the higher end, and you can see it's trending up this month. That's a little bit different than the last month, it was trending down. So that means people are actually moving money around. It's not just being held. When the game is in flux, people will hold money because they're not sure where to spend it, and then you'll see this actually dip. So most of the time, when there's uncertainty, that's when you see the velocity of this go down. When people are actually moving money around, they know what they're doing. They are buying things, they're selling things, that's when it moves higher. It's a sign of the health of the economy. Are people moving money around? All right. I think that is what we wanted to cover from MER. Sorry, I'm flying all over the place here. Destruction numbers. Let's take a look at those. Total value destroyed by region. Delve clearly on top here with over 4 trillion. That looks more like 4.5 trillion. Usually the forge is pretty high in this because people stake out, market hubs and trade routes, and you'll see a lot of destruction there. And usually those things are defenseless haulers of a lot of wealth, and over time those add up. So yeah, the Forge and Lone Trek and the Citadel, those are 3 regions that have the main trade hubs. The Silk Road goes through them as well. And those are the second 3. But because the war is in full swing, you can see that's way over 4,000 billion, which is 4 trillion. Also, I want to look here at some of the, like Immensia is on here, registering higher than usual because a lot of structures being destroyed there. We're talking about legacy space and Fire Coalition space. Aquarius is also part of the Delve campaign, so if things are blowing up there, that is attributed to the war that's going on there. And here's Catch at number like 6. So Catch burning down as well. And the last one I would look for is
Feth. Right there.
Which one?
Fethalbalus or Essence maybe.
Fate, yeah. Fate. I don't know. I used to call it Fate, but I don't know.
Fethabalus.
Yeah, right here, Fetabalus. And Fountain. Well, they're kind of the same.
Fountain.
So yeah, I was actually looking for Impasse, but I don't see it up here. So maybe that'll register next month. This is again a month ago, so that's where a lot of destruction's happening. And we'll take one last slide for you guys, and then we'll call it a show, is where all the destruction is actually happening. I believe there's some mountain graphs, and you can see, of course, this must be destruction. No, this is concurrent players. This is destroyed value. We'll take a quick look, and you can see destroyed value. You do have a lot of high spires, they used to say in historical architecture class, whatever that was. I forget what they called it. So these giant towers to the sky, those are massive amounts of destruction. You can also see, and a lot of that is Delve. It's just on top of each other, so it's giant. You also see some over here in Catch, Immensia, as we were saying before. That makes sense. Oh, look at this stuff over here inside of probably that stain, but this is where the big stuff is in Delve. That's where the big stuff is as far as destruction numbers go. Then here you have a ton of redundancy, and I bet you that's G to that really long tower there. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings map, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, you got anything else, Ronald, before we take off?
Yeah, I got a low sec item.
Cool.
For those people listening who maybe are, not too enthralled in getting out to nullsec or anything, and have been dreaming, of being on a Keepstar kill of some sort, or being at least watching a Keepstar, being beat down. Keep an eye on a low sec system, Seaseed. Our friends Snuff and our friend Siege Green have been fighting it out. Snuff reinforced Siege Green Keepstar. If I did my math right, it looks like their armor timer somewhere around Saturday. Yeah. Looks like someone did the math for us already. Around 11 Eve time, Siege Green armor timer for their Keepstar. So the armor timer is generally the really big fight. And then it'll go into a hull timer. So you can track that if you're thinking like, hey, I want
to... Oh. 1 second. I accidentally hit the wrong button.
For your kill board.
My bad. I have to tell you, I accidentally hit hit the hang up button when I was trying to hit the share screen button.
Uh-oh.
So just back up like 30 seconds and tell us what you're going to do. You're talking about Secede, and there's a fight this Saturday. Are you still there, Rundle?
Yeah, no problem. So what I was saying was, if you have dreamed of being on a Keepstar kill or watching one go down, there's going to be one in Losec and Seaseed. You can, maybe get involved in that. And if you wanted to try and get a Keepstar kill on your kill board for posterity reasons, then you can track the timer moving forward from there. Maybe have an opportunity where you only have to kind of go out to a Losec system to see it instead of trumping on all the way out to.
How do you spell Secede?
It's SEI. Yeah, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I thought so. Well, give me the region. I'll find it. I think I know where it is on the map.
Avatar. All right, here it is. It is SISEIDE.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, Sindel Pellion is listening in. Sindel, I know you have missed my voice. It has reached the corners of the metaverse and has dragged you to talking stations. Welcome. I'm
No
glad.
way, Sindel. Haven't heard that name in a little while.
Yeah, Sindel and I go back a while.
Good to see that.
Good friends.
Matt, we're still black on live, by the way.
What?
Yeah.
Let me check it. Oh, okay. Hold on just 1 second. I know what's missing.
So Sindel, fixing this, does this mean you're going to return to Eve soon? Since you are listening live?
Oh, we miss her songs.
Absolutely. There is so much that could be parodied. You are.
It's a parody paradise.
It's a parody paradise. Yeah.
I'm still trying to find. There it is. Got it. And there it is. An Amatar. It's a big area.
Yep.
So
anyways, good opportunity if you're, if you're not a nullsec person, or you want to come out of a wormhole or you want to come see what happens in these big Keepstar fights. There's a great opportunity to see one possibly happen, go down in Losec. And the big fight should happen at a really good time on a Saturday, and then I guess the timer would probably be 48 hours after that, I would guess. I think that's how that goes. Maybe 72, something like that. I can't remember.
All right, thanks, Rundle. Tiberius, you got any last thoughts?
No, I think what's on everyone's mind is the fact that the mineral price index just continues to soar sky high. It's burning a hole in everyone's pockets. I know that it certainly is for me. So everyone's hurting, and I'm hoping, and I think everyone else is kind of hoping that the carrot at the end of the stick is coming soon, because it's getting pretty bad.
Yeah. Also, the MPI is still really high, which is the I believe that's, let me make sure, it is the mineral index, which is basically the cost of minerals. So it tells you how much T1, basically how much T1 has gone up in value, and you can see it's way over the line. This line here, the center line, is kind of like stasis. So if it's below that, things are relatively cheaper than they were. This is a historical graph, so it really just compares itself against previous time. And this is the equilibrium again. So it's, because you'll see this is actually rated in like, that's not a percentage, that's something else, I believe. But you can see just by looking at this, it is sky high, higher than it has ever been. We've talked about that a few times, but there it is altogether.
It's not really news. It just continues to go and go and go.
Yeah, that's why we didn't talk about it today, but in previous episodes, we did talk about it being up there. We know this is the case because of scarcity. Scarcity has not been lifted. There haven't been any adjustments to inject more or into the world or easier access to it. So that remains high, but there's a lot of people that are new to the game that are mining the low end minerals, and that's good for them because they get to turn in their hard work for a good profit. You don't want a situation where the only people in town are massive industrialists in nullsec making the market so flooded that new guys just their labor just isn't worth anything because there's no value in Trit or in any of the other stuff. So that's the reversal now. That's the age that we're in for this year, next year, possibly forever. It is scarcity. Things are valuable. Things cost money, and minerals are scarce.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I'm excited that CCP has the commodities breakdown again. I think that's really important. Overall, I think that I think that the economy is in a relatively decent place. I think a lot of people would like to see mineral changes a little bit, and not like drastic changes, like reversion of the issues that we have, reversion of what CCP implemented with scarcity, but, small tweaks like, reduction of NPC mining fleets and, some other things, maybe increase the spawn rate of anoms, little things here and there that I'm not as well versed in, that I think could probably be beneficial to everybody and not have a huge impact on the game. So,
we may see some adjustments, by the way, because Ratati actually talked a few weeks ago on a financial show for the Oz as a financial guy. And he did talk about some of the stuff that they were working through. And there were some signs in there that something was going to change sometime, probably in the first quarter, second quarter, which is right where we're at now. So you might see some adjustments to mining ships and that sort of stuff sometime soon. We're kind of expecting that, so it won't be a surprise if it hits. So we'll see what happens. But low Plex prices are good for some people because, as Hilmar explained it, Plex is pegged, and the economy in Eve moves around Plex. So when Plex goes up or Plex goes down, that's an illusion. It's not moving up or down. It's the value of everything else in relationship to Plex. So when Plex is cheap, people's labor is appreciated. When Plex is expensive, that means your labor in this game doesn't count for anything. So we're kind of in a good spot. Okay. That said, we're going to let you leave this spot. We'll see you tomorrow on Talking in Stations around the same time. And we'll go ahead and raid somebody else. Sindel Pellion, it's nice to see you in the audience there. If you don't know who Sindel is, she's a great big celebrity in EVE Online historically. Made some parody songs, favorite to find at meetups, that sort of thing. So it's nice to see her name pop up. Rundle, thanks a lot. Tiberius, thanks a lot. We will see you guys next time. I'm Talking in Stations, and sorry about my personal blackout there, where I blacked out the screen for a good 2 or 3 minutes. I appreciate you guys' patience. I hit the wrong button.
Thanks, Aaron. Love you back, Sindel.
All right.
have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. We'll see you guys.